The morning Natalie Evans found her father dead in his office above the general store, a single bullet hole through his temple and his ledger open to a page full of debts he could never repay. She understood that survival in Columbia, California, meant learning to stand alone even when your knees wanted to buckle beneath you. She was 22 years old that September morning in 1873, and the autumn sun streamed through the dusty window as if nothing had changed, as if the world had not just tilted sideways and dumped her into an existence she had never imagined. The sheriff ruled it suicide within the hour, barely looking at the scene, barely asking questions. Her father had owed money to nearly every merchant in town, had gambled away her mother's inheritance, and had left Natalie with nothing but the store itself and enough debt to drown in. The funeral was sparsely attended. Columbia was a mining town that had seen better days, its gold mostly played out, its population dwindling as men moved on to richer strikes or gave up entirely and headed back east. Those who remained were hard people, worn down by disappointment and suspicious of weakness. They came to the funeral out of obligation, not sympathy, and left as quickly as propriety allowed. Natalie stood by the grave in her black dress, the only good one she owned, and felt the weight of eyes on her back. They were wondering, she knew, what would become of her. A woman alone with no family, no prospects, and a store full of debt. The whispers had already started. Some suggested she should marry quickly, find some man willing to take on her burdens. Others predicted she would sell everything and leave town on the next stage. She did neither. Instead, she rolled up her sleeves and opened the store the very next morning, her eyes red-rimmed but her jaw set with determination that surprised even her. If her father had taught her anything in his scattered, unreliable way, it was how to run the store. She knew the inventory, knew the suppliers, knew which miners paid on time and which needed prodding. She could do this. She had to do this. The first week was brutal. Men came in expecting her to fold, to offer credit she could not afford to give, to be soft where her father had been hard. She learned to say no with a firmness that left no room for argument. She learned to meet their eyes steadily, to keep her hands from shaking when they raised their voices, to lock the door at night and check it twice before climbing the stairs to the empty apartment above. It was during that first week that she noticed him. Nathan Zimmerman was a cowboy, which was unusual in a mining town. He worked at one of the few remaining ranches in the valley, bringing cattle down from the high country, breaking horses, doing whatever work needed doing. He was 26, tall and lean with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of creek water, that shifting green-brown that changed with the light. He came into the store on her third day of running it alone, needing supplies, and paid in cash without haggling over prices. "Thank you," she said, surprised by the ease of the transaction. He nodded, touching the brim of his hat. "My condolences, Miss Evans." His voice was quiet, rough from disuse, as if he did not speak often. There was something in his eyes, though, something gentle that made her throat tighten unexpectedly. She managed another thank you before he left, the bell above the door jingling in his wake. She did not think much of it until the next morning, when she came downstairs to open the store and found a small bundle of wildflowers sitting on the doorstep. They were simple things, the kind that grew in the meadows beyond town, blue lupines and Indian paintbrush, golden poppies and white yarrow, tied together with a piece of grass stem. There was no note. Natalie looked up and down the empty street but saw no one. She picked up the flowers, their stems still cool with morning dew, and something in her chest loosened just slightly. Someone had thought of her. Someone had taken the time to gather these and leave them here. She put them in a jar of water on the counter and tried not to think about who it might have been. The next morning there were more flowers. Different ones this time, purple asters and red columbine, a spray of white daisies. Again, no note. Again, the street was empty when she opened the door. She added them to the jar, the burst of color brightening the dim store. On the third morning, she woke early and waited by the window, peering through the curtains as the sky lightened from black to gray to pale gold. The street was quiet, the buildings casting long shadows. Then she saw him, Nathan Zimmerman, walking down the center of the street with a small bunch of flowers in his hand. He moved quietly, as if trying not to wake the town, and placed the flowers carefully on her doorstep before stepping back and looking up at her window. She pulled away from the curtain quickly, her heart suddenly hammering. Why would he do this? They barely knew each other. He had spoken perhaps 10 words to her in total. Yet here he was, bringing her flowers in the pre-dawn quiet, a gesture so unexpectedly tender that she did not know what to make of it. She waited a few minutes before going downstairs, trying to compose herself, trying to understand the rush of feeling that made her fingers fumble with the buttons of her dress. When she opened the door, he was gone, but the flowers remained. Yellow buttercups and purple clover, wild roses with their sweet scent, all dewy and fresh. The pattern continued. Every morning, without fail, there were flowers on her doorstep. She stopped trying to catch him, stopped waiting by the window, but she knew it was Nathan. She saw him sometimes in town, at the feed store or the saloon, and he would nod to her with that same quiet courtesy, never mentioning the flowers, never asking for acknowledgement. 2 weeks after the flowers started appearing, Nathan came into the store to buy flour and coffee. The shop was empty except for the two of them, the afternoon sun slanting through the windows and making dust motes dance in the air. Natalie measured out the flour, her hands steady, hyper-aware of his presence on the other side of the counter. "Mr. Zimmerman," she said, not looking up, "I have been finding flowers on my doorstep every morning. Is that so?" His voice was neutral, giving nothing away. "It is." She tied the flour sack and set it on the counter, finally meeting his eyes. "I wonder who might be leaving them." He held her gaze, and something flickered in those creek water eyes, something warm and a little uncertain. "Maybe someone who thinks you could use a bit of brightness in your days." "Why?" The question came out more directly than she intended. Why would someone do that? Nathan was quiet for a long moment, his hands resting on the counter. His fingers were calloused, scarred from rope and leather and hard work. "I reckon everyone deserves something to smile about," he said finally. "Especially folks going through hard times." Natalie felt her throat tighten again, that same unexpected surge of emotion. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." He picked up his purchases, counting out coins and placing them carefully on the counter. "I know you're working yourself near to death trying to keep this store running. I know you're doing it alone, with no help and plenty of folks hoping you will fail. I know you come down those stairs every morning looking like you barely slept, and you still manage to be fair and honest with everyone who walks through that door." She stared at him, speechless. She had thought herself invisible, her struggles private, but he had seen her, really seen her. "The flowers," he continued, his voice dropping lower, "they are just meant to make you smile, that is all." "To see me smile," she whispered. "Yes." The simplicity of his answer, the quiet honesty in it, made her heart ache. "Is it working?" Despite everything, despite the exhaustion and grief and fear that had been her constant companions for weeks, Natalie felt her mouth curve upward. It was a small smile, tentative but real. "Yes," she admitted. "It is working." Nathan smiled back, a slow, genuine expression that transformed his serious face. "Good," he said, and touched his hat brim before leaving. After that, something shifted between them. Nathan still left flowers every morning, but now when he came into the store, they talked. Small conversations at first about the weather, about the cattle business, about the store. Gradually, they grew longer, more personal. She learned that he had come west from Missouri after the war, though he never spoke about what he had seen or done. He had worked his way through Kansas and Nebraska, learning the cattle trade, before settling in California. He liked the mountains here, he said, the way they stood stark against the sky. He liked the silence of the high meadows where he took the cattle to graze. She told him about her mother, who had died when Natalie was 16, about growing up in the store, about her father's slow descent into gambling and debt. She did not excuse her father's failures, but Nathan heard the grief beneath her words, the loss of the man her father had been before desperation consumed him. "You are not responsible for his choices," Nathan said one afternoon as she was closing up. He had stayed late, helping her move a heavy shipment of goods into the back room, and now they stood in the dusty space between shelves, closer than propriety strictly allowed. "I know that in my head," Natalie said, "but my heart feels differently. Hearts take longer to convince." He reached out slowly, giving her time to step back if she wanted, and brushed a cobweb from her shoulder. The touch was brief, barely there, but it sent heat racing through her. "You are doing good, Natalie. Better than good. You are surviving, and that takes strength most folks do not have." She looked up at him, at the kindness in his face, and felt something unfurl in her chest, something that had been closed tight since her father's death. "Thank you," she said, "for the flowers, for seeing me." "I could not help but see you," Nathan said, his voice rough. "You shine brighter than you know." The air between them felt charged, full of possibility. Natalie's breath caught, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her, hoped he might. But then the bell above the front door jangled and they stepped apart quickly. "Natalie," a woman's voice called. "Are you still open?" "Yes, Mrs. Chen, one moment," Natalie called back, her cheeks flushed. She glanced at Nathan, who was already moving toward the back door. "I will see you tomorrow," he said quietly, and was gone. That night, lying in bed, Natalie could not stop thinking about the way he had looked at her, the gentleness in his touch. She had not thought about romance, had not allowed herself to want anything beyond survival, but Nathan was making her want more. He was making her feel things she had thought buried with her old life. The flowers kept coming. Asters and cosmos, fireweed and shooting stars, sage blossoms and desert marigolds, each bunch a reminder that someone was thinking of her, caring for her in his quiet way. And Nathan kept coming to the store, always finding reasons to stop by, to talk, to help with heavy lifting or difficult customers. The town noticed, of course. Columbia was too small for secrets. Natalie heard the whispers, saw the speculative looks, but for once she did not care what people thought. Nathan treated her with respect, never pushed for more than she was willing to give, and slowly, day by day, she found herself falling in love with him. It happened in small moments. The way he listened when she talked, really listened, his full attention on her. The way he laughed, rare but genuine, at something funny she said. The way he looked at her when he thought she was not watching, his eyes full of an emotion she was afraid to name. The way he touched her, always careful, always respectful, but with a reverence that made her feel precious. October came, bringing cooler weather and the first hints of winter in the high country. The aspens turned gold on the mountainsides, and the air smelled of wood smoke and falling leaves. Nathan had been working long days, bringing the cattle down from summer pasture, and Natalie had not seen him for nearly a week. The flowers still appeared every morning, which meant he was riding into town in the dark, leaving them and riding back before dawn. The thought of him making that journey just to bring her flowers made her chest ache with tenderness. On a Sunday afternoon, her one day to close the store early, Natalie decided to take a walk. She had been cooped up for weeks, barely leaving the building, and the autumn sun was too beautiful to ignore. She walked to the edge of town, past the last scattered houses, to where the meadow began. The grass was golden now, dried by summer sun, and wildflowers still bloomed in sheltered spots. She was gathering a handful of asters, thinking she would put them in her own window for once, when she heard hoofbeats. Looking up, she saw Nathan riding toward her on a rangy bay gelding, his hat pulled low against the sun. Her heart did an odd little skip at the sight of him. "Afternoon," he said, pulling the horse to a stop. "You are far from town." "I needed air," she said, shading her eyes to look up at him, "and beauty. I have been surrounded by nothing but dry goods and account books for too long." Nathan swung down from the saddle with an easy grace. "I know the feeling. You want to see something really beautiful." Natalie hesitated. Being alone with him out here was probably unwise, but she found she did not care. "Yes," she said. He smiled, that transforming smile that made her knees weak. "Come on, then. We will have to ride together, if you do not mind." She did not mind at all. Nathan mounted first, then reached down and pulled her up easily, settling her in front of him on the saddle. His arms came around her to hold the reins, and Natalie leaned back against his chest, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. It was improper and probably scandalous, but it felt right in a way nothing else had for a long time. They rode up into the foothills, following a faint trail through oak and pine. The horse climbed steadily, and the valley fell away below them. Nathan did not talk, and Natalie was content with the silence, with the creak of leather and the soft sound of the horse's hooves on pine needles. After about 20 minutes, they emerged onto a rocky outcrop that overlooked the entire valley. "Oh," Natalie breathed. The view was spectacular. Columbia spread out below, small and neat as a child's toy town. Beyond it, the valley stretched golden in the afternoon light, the river a silver thread winding through. Mountains rose on all sides, blue and purple in the distance, their peaks already white with early snow. The sky was impossibly vast, that deep October blue that seemed to go on forever. Nathan dismounted and helped her down, his hands lingering at her waist. "I come here sometimes," he said, "when I need to remember how big the world is, how small my problems are in comparison." "It is beautiful," Natalie said, unable to look away from the view. "Thank you for showing me." They sat on a sun-warmed rock, shoulders touching, and watched the light change as the sun moved west. Natalie felt a peace she had not experienced since her father's death, a sense that maybe, just maybe, life held good things as well as grief. "Natalie," Nathan said after a while, his voice careful, "I want to tell you something, but I do not want to make you uncomfortable or pressure you in any way." She turned to look at him, her heart suddenly pounding. "All right." He took a breath. "I know we have not known each other long. I know you are dealing with a lot right now, with the store and your father's debts. I know the last thing you probably need is some cowboy complicating your life." He paused, his jaw working. "But I have to tell you that I have come to care for you, more than care for you. When I see you working so hard, being so strong, it makes me want to do everything I can to make your life easier. The flowers, they are just a small thing, but they are my way of trying to bring a little light into your days, to see you smile." Natalie's throat was tight, tears pricking her eyes. "Nathan, you do not have to say anything," he continued quickly. "I just wanted you to know. I will keep bringing you flowers either way, will keep being your friend if that is all you want. But if you might want more someday when things are less complicated, I would like that. I would like that very much." She reached for his hand, lacing her fingers through his calloused ones. "Nathan, look at me." He did, and she saw vulnerability in his eyes, hope and fear mixed together. "It is not too soon," she said, "and my life is always going to be complicated. That is just how life is. But when I see those flowers every morning, when I see you, I feel something I thought I had lost. I feel hope. I feel joy. You make me want to do more than just survive. You make me want to live." "Natalie," he breathed, and then his hand was cupping her face, his thumb brushing her cheek, and he was kissing her. It was gentle at first, tentative, a question. She answered by wrapping her arms around his neck and kissing him back, pouring everything she felt into it. Nathan made a low sound in his throat and pulled her closer, one hand sliding into her hair, and the kiss deepened into something that made her whole body come alive. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "Why did you wait so long?" She was half laughing, half crying, overwhelmed by the intensity of her feelings. "I did not want to rush you, did not want to take advantage." He kissed her again, softer this time, sweetly. "You deserve to be courted properly. I think bringing me flowers every single morning counts as proper courting," Natalie said, smiling. "In fact, it might be the most romantic thing anyone has ever done." Nathan smiled back, that rare, beautiful smile. "Then I will keep doing it. For as long as you will let me." They stayed on the outcrop until the sun began to set, talking and kissing and making plans. Nathan wanted to help her with the store, wanted to use his earnings to pay down her father's debts faster. She protested at first, but he was insistent. "Let me help," he said. "We are together now, are we not? Your burdens are my burdens. We barely know each other," she pointed out, though her heart was singing. "I know enough. I know you are the strongest, bravest woman I have ever met. I know you make me want to be a better man. I know that when I am with you, I feel like I have finally found where I belong." He took both her hands, his expression serious. "I love you, Natalie. I know it is fast. I know it is probably crazy, but I do. I love you." Tears spilled down her cheeks, but they were happy tears, joyful tears. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I have been falling in love with you since the first flower appeared." They rode back to town as the stars came out, Natalie cradled against Nathan's chest, both of them quiet with contentment. At her door, he helped her down and kissed her good night, a long, lingering kiss that promised more to come. "I will see you in the morning," he said, "with flowers." "I will be waiting," she replied. True to his word, Nathan continued bringing flowers every morning, but now when he left them, he would wait for her to come down so he could kiss her before heading to work. The town buzzed with gossip, but it was mostly approving. People liked Nathan, respected his quiet competence and steady nature. And they could see how happy Natalie had become, how the shadows under her eyes had faded, how she smiled more readily. Nathan insisted on contributing money toward the store's debts, despite her protests. "We are building a life together," he said firmly. "That means sharing everything good and bad." With his help, the financial pressure eased. They worked out a payment plan with her father's creditors, and slowly, month by month, the debts grew smaller. Nathan spent every free moment at the store, fixing broken shelves, reorganizing the stockroom, serving customers when she was overwhelmed. They worked side by side, learning each other's rhythms, growing closer with each passing day. Winter came, bringing snow to the mountains and cold winds to the valley. The cattle were down in the lower pastures now, and Nathan's workload lightened. He spent more time in town, more time with Natalie. They went to church socials together, to town meetings, slowly becoming accepted as a couple. On Christmas Eve, Nathan closed the store early and took Natalie to dinner at the hotel restaurant, the fanciest place in Columbia. She wore her best dress, dark blue wool with lace at the collar, and he wore a suit she had never seen him in before. He looked uncomfortable in it, kept tugging at the collar, but he was so handsome her breath caught. Over roast chicken and potatoes, he told her stories about growing up in Missouri, about his family's small farm, about the war that had scattered them. His father had died at Shiloh, his mother of fever a year later. His younger brother had gone to Texas, and they had lost touch. Nathan had been 20 when the war ended, alone in the world, and he had headed west because there was nothing left to hold him in Missouri. "I have been drifting ever since," he said, his hand covering hers on the table. "Until I met you. You are my anchor, Natalie. You make me want to stay put, to build something lasting." "You are my anchor too," she said softly. "You kept me from drowning when I thought I would go under." After dinner, they walked through the snowy streets, hand in hand. Most businesses were closed for the holiday, lights glowing warmly in windows. Someone was playing the piano at the saloon, a melancholy tune that drifted on the cold air. At her door, Nathan pulled something from his pocket. "I have something for you," he said, suddenly nervous. "It is not much, but I wanted you to have it." He opened his hand to reveal a ring. It was simple, a thin gold band with a small blue stone, probably topaz or aquamarine. Nothing fancy, but beautiful in its simplicity. "Nathan," Natalie breathed. "Marry me," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I know we have only known each other a few months. I know people will say it is too fast, but I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to bring you flowers until we are old and gray. I want to build a life with you, have children with you, grow old with you. Marry me, Natalie, please." She was crying, smiling, and crying at the same time. "Yes," she said. "Yes, yes, yes." Nathan slipped the ring onto her finger, his hand shaking slightly, and then kissed her with such tenderness, such love, that she felt it all the way to her soul. They were married in February, on a cold, clear day when the sun sparkled on snow and the sky was a brilliant blue. The church was full, the entire town turning out to witness the wedding. Natalie wore her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved, white lace and satin that still fit perfectly. Nathan wore his suit, his hair slicked back, his eyes bright with happiness as she walked down the aisle toward him. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. When Nathan said his vows, his voice steady and strong, promising to love and cherish her until death parted them, Natalie felt the absolute certainty that she had made the right choice. This man, this quiet, gentle cowboy who brought her flowers every morning, was her future, her forever. They moved into the apartment above the store together, combining their lives completely. Nathan kept his job at the ranch for a while, riding out early and coming back in the evenings to help at the store. But as the business grew, bolstered by his financial contributions and their combined hard work, it became clear they needed him there full time. He gave notice at the ranch and became a shopkeeper, which amused him to no end. "Never thought I would trade my horse for an apron," he joked, but he did not seem to mind. He was good with customers, patient and fair, and people trusted him. Together, they made the store more successful than it had been in years. By summer, they had paid off all of her father's debts. The day they made the final payment, they closed the store early and rode out to Nathan's overlook to celebrate. They made love there on a blanket under the vast sky, the grass sweet smelling around them, the mountains standing eternal in the distance. Afterward, lying in Nathan's arms, Natalie felt a contentment so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "What is it?" Nathan asked, stroking her hair. "I am just happy," she said. "So happy I can barely contain it. A year ago I thought my life was over, and now I have everything I ever wanted." "So do I," Nathan murmured, kissing her forehead. "So do I." In September, exactly a year after her father's death, Natalie realized she was pregnant. The signs were unmistakable, and her suspicions were confirmed by the doctor. She was nervous to tell Nathan, unsure how he would react, but when she did, his face lit up with such joy that her fears evaporated. "A baby," he kept saying, his hand on her still flat stomach. "We are going to have a baby." "Are you happy?" she asked. "Happy," he laughed, picking her up and spinning her around. "Natalie, I am more than happy. I am over the moon. I am going to be a father." They spent the pregnancy preparing, turning the small second bedroom into a nursery, buying a cradle and tiny clothes, dreaming about the future. Nathan was attentive and protective, constantly making sure Natalie was not working too hard, was eating enough, was resting. He still brought her flowers every morning without fail, though now he picked them on Sundays and kept them fresh through the week. Their son was born in May of 1875, during a warm spring storm that washed the world clean. The labor was long and difficult, and Nathan paced the floor downstairs while the midwife attended Natalie. When he finally heard the baby's cry, he took the stairs 3 at a time. Natalie was exhausted but radiant, cradling a tiny bundle wrapped in a white blanket. "Come meet your son," she said softly. Nathan approached almost reverently and looked down at the baby's small, scrunched face. "He is perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect." They named him Thomas after Nathan's father. Tommy was a good baby, healthy and strong, with his mother's dark hair and his father's green-brown eyes. Nathan was a devoted father, up in the night to walk Tommy when he cried, changing diapers without complaint, constantly marveling at the tiny person they had created. The store continued to thrive. They hired help, a young man named Peter who needed work, which freed them up to spend more time with Tommy. They saved money, made plans, talked about buying a house outside of town, somewhere with space for children to run and play. When Tommy was 18 months old, Natalie became pregnant again. This time, she knew what to expect, was not afraid. Their daughter was born in winter, a quick, easy birth that surprised everyone. They named her Rose after the wild roses Nathan had included in so many of his flower bouquets. She had her father's coloring, light brown hair and those changeable eyes, and a sunny disposition that made everyone love her. With 2 children, the apartment above the store became cramped. Nathan found a piece of land just outside town, 10 acres with a creek running through it and views of the mountains. They hired builders and constructed a house, nothing fancy but solid and well-made, with 4 bedrooms and a wide porch. They moved in on a brilliant autumn day, Tommy running through the empty rooms shrieking with delight, baby Rose gurgling in Natalie's arms. That first night in their new home, after the children were asleep, Nathan and Natalie sat on the porch and watched the stars come out. He had his arm around her and she leaned into his warmth, perfectly content. "You remember the first time I brought you flowers?" Nathan asked. "Of course I do. It was the day after my father's funeral. I thought I was going to collapse under the weight of everything, and then I found those flowers, and it was like someone had thrown me a rope." "I was so nervous," Nathan admitted. "I kept thinking you would find it strange or unwelcome, but I could not stop myself. You looked so sad, so alone, and I just wanted to do something, anything, to help." "Why flowers?" she asked, a question she had never quite posed directly. Nathan was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "My mother used to say that flowers were proof that God loved beauty. That even in the hardest times, there was still something lovely to look at if you knew where to find it. After she died, I started noticing flowers more. They were like little messages, reminders that life kept going, kept being beautiful even when it hurt. I wanted to give that to you." Natalie turned to kiss him, her heart overflowing with love. "You gave me so much more than flowers. You gave me hope. You gave me a reason to keep going. You gave me everything." "You gave me a home," Nathan said. "A family, a purpose. Before you, I was just existing. You made me live." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the night deepen. Somewhere in the house, one of the children stirred and then settled back to sleep. An owl called from the trees by the creek. The air smelled of pine and wood smoke and the last of the autumn wildflowers. Years passed in a blur of happiness. Tommy started school, serious and studious like his mother. Rose was wild and fearless, always climbing trees or chasing chickens, giving them heart attacks on a regular basis. The store continued to prosper. They hired more help, eventually turning the day-to-day management over to Peter, while they focused on raising their family and enjoying their life together. Nathan never stopped bringing Natalie flowers. Even after they had been married for years, even when his hair started to gray at the temples and lines appeared at the corners of his eyes, he would leave a small bouquet on the kitchen table or by her side of the bed, or on the porch railing. Sometimes they were wildflowers picked on his morning rides, sometimes cultivated flowers from the garden Natalie had planted. But they were always there, a constant reminder of his love. When Tommy was 10 and Rose was 8, Natalie became pregnant again, a surprise that delighted them both. They had thought their family was complete, but this unexpected blessing was welcomed with open arms. Their second son was born in summer, an easy birth that had Nathan joking she could probably deliver the baby while making breakfast. They named him James, and he was the image of Nathan, with light hair and those creek water eyes and a quiet, observant nature. Tommy and Rose adored him, constantly fighting over who got to hold him or help feed him. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm. The children grew. The business continued to thrive. Nathan and Natalie grew older together, more in love with each passing year. They faced challenges, of course. There were illnesses and injuries, financial scares and difficult decisions. But they faced everything together, their partnership unshakable. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathan took Natalie back to the outcrop where he had first kissed her. The children were with friends and they had the whole day to themselves. They rode up the familiar trail, older now but still strong, still eager for each other's company. At the outcrop, Nathan spread a blanket and unpacked a picnic lunch. They ate and talked and laughed, remembering their courtship, marveling at how far they had come. "Do you ever regret it?" Natalie asked, leaning back against his chest. "Giving up cowboy life for shopkeeping?" "Never," Nathan said firmly. "Not for 1 second. I would give up anything for you, for our family. That is not a sacrifice, that is a privilege." "I love you," she said, the words as true now as the first time she had spoken them. "I love you too. More now than I did when we married. More every day." He turned her in his arms so he could look into her face. "You are my whole world, Natalie. You and the children. Everything good in my life comes from you." They made love there on the blanket, slower now than in their youth, but no less passionate, no less connected. Afterward, holding each other as the sun moved across the sky, Natalie thought about the girl she had been, standing over her father's grave, terrified and alone. She had never imagined this life, this happiness. She had not known it was possible to love someone as much as she loved Nathan, to be loved so completely in return. The years continued to pass. Tommy grew into a serious young man who loved books and wanted to go to university. Rose was as wild as ever, interested in everything, constantly bringing home injured animals to nurse back to health. James was quiet and thoughtful, happiest when working with his hands. They were good children, kind and honest, and Natalie and Nathan were proud of them. When Tommy left for university in San Francisco, Natalie cried for days. Nathan held her, understanding her tears, feeling the bittersweet ache of watching their firstborn step into the world. But Tommy came home for holidays and summers, full of stories and ideas, and they saw how he was becoming the man he was meant to be. Rose declared she wanted to be a veterinarian, which was almost unheard of for a woman, but Natalie and Nathan encouraged her. Their daughter had her mother's determination and her father's gentle touch with animals. If anyone could break barriers, it was Rose. James apprenticed with a carpenter in town, showing a natural talent for woodworking. He was happiest in the workshop, surrounded by the smell of sawdust and the sound of planes and saws. He made his mother a beautiful jewelry box for Christmas one year, inlaid with different woods in a flower pattern, and she cried when she saw it. As their children grew and became independent, Nathan and Natalie found themselves with more time together. They took long rides in the mountains, went on picnics, spent lazy afternoons reading on the porch. Their love had deepened over the years, grown richer and more complex, until they could hardly imagine existing without each other. Nathan's hair went completely gray, then white. Lines creased his face, but to Natalie, he was as handsome as the day she met him. Her own hair silvered, and her hands grew rough from years of work, but Nathan still looked at her like she was the most beautiful woman in the world. He still brought her flowers every single morning, even when his joints ached, and the walk to the meadow took longer than it used to. One morning, when they had been married for 25 years, Natalie woke to find Nathan sitting on the edge of the bed, holding a bouquet of wildflowers. The morning sun streamed through the window, turning his white hair into a halo. "Good morning," she said, smiling. "You did not have to bring those all the way up here. You could have left them in the kitchen." "I wanted to watch you wake up to them," Nathan said, his voice still rough from sleep. "I wanted to see you smile." Natalie sat up and took the flowers, breathing in their sweet scent. Lupines and poppies, asters and yarrow, the same flowers he had left on her doorstep that first morning so many years ago. "After all this time, you still want to see me smile." "After all this time," Nathan confirmed, leaning in to kiss her. "Every day for the rest of my life." Their children grew up and made their own lives. Tommy became a lawyer in San Francisco but visited often, eventually bringing home a kind, intelligent woman named Sarah whom everyone loved. They married and had 2 children, giving Nathan and Natalie their first grandchildren. Rose did become a veterinarian, studying under a veterinary surgeon in Sacramento and eventually opening her own practice in Colombia. She married another veterinarian, a man named David, who shared her passion for animals, and they had 3 daughters who were all as wild as their mother had been. James married a quiet, sweet-natured woman named Elizabeth who worked as a schoolteacher. They built a house near Nathan and Natalie's place and had 4 children, filling the valley with family. James took over the store eventually, running it with the same integrity his parents had shown. Nathan and Natalie found themselves surrounded by children and grandchildren, their house always full of noise and laughter. They reveled in it, these 2 people who had once been so alone, now at the center of a large, loving family. As they grew older, their pace slowed. Nathan's knees bothered him, and Natalie's eyesight weakened. But they still took short rides when weather permitted, still sat on the porch in the evenings, still held hands like newlyweds. The flowers continued, every morning, though sometimes now one of the grandchildren would help Nathan pick them. On their 40th wedding anniversary, the entire family gathered at the house for a celebration. Children ran everywhere, grandchildren ranging from infants to teenagers. There was food and music and dancing, stories told and retold, laughter ringing out across the valley. As the sun set, Someone called for Nathan and Natalie to dance. Nathan stood, joints creaking, and offered Natalie his hand with a courtly bow that made her laugh. They danced slowly in the firelight, holding each other close, barely moving but perfectly in tune. "Do you remember our wedding day?" Natalie asked. "Every moment of it," Nathan said. "You were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen, walking down that aisle toward me. I could not believe you were real, that you were choosing me." "I would choose you again," Natalie said. "Every single time, in every possible life, as would I." Nathan kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You are my greatest adventure, Natalie, my greatest joy." Around them, their family watched with tears in their eyes, seeing the love that had built all of this, that had created this large, happy family. Tommy thought about the stories his father had told him, about finding his mother at her lowest point and wanting only to make her smile. Rose remembered her father bringing her mother flowers every morning without fail, a ritual that had shaped her understanding of what love should be. James thought about the patience and kindness his parents had always shown each other, the way they were a team in everything. As the years continued to pass, Nathan and Natalie's health began to decline. It was gradual, a slow dimming rather than a sudden darkness. Nathan's heart grew weak, and Natalie's body became frail. But they still had each other, still woke up together every morning, still shared breakfast and conversation and gentle touches. On a spring morning, when Nathan was 78 and Natalie was 74, he woke before dawn as he always did. His body protested as he rose, everything aching, but he ignored it. He walked slowly out to the meadow, now much closer than it had been when they first moved here, development having spread around them. But there were still wildflowers, still beauty to be found. He picked a small bouquet, his hands shaking slightly. Lupines and poppies, just like that first morning. Back at the house, he placed them on Natalie's nightstand and eased back into bed beside her. She stirred, opening her eyes, and smiled when she saw the flowers. "Every morning," she whispered, her voice thin but full of love. "Every single morning for 50 years. To see you smile," Nathan said, the old answer coming automatically. "I am smiling," Natalie said, reaching for his hand. "I will always smile when I see you." They lay together, hands intertwined, and watched the sun rise through the window. It was beautiful, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, the mountains dark silhouettes against the brightening eastern horizon. "I love you," Natalie said. "I love you," Nathan replied. More than words can say. They closed their eyes, content, surrounded by the life they had built, the love they had nurtured. Outside, birds began to sing, greeting the new day. The flowers on the nightstand released their gentle perfume. Somewhere in the house, they could hear one of the grandchildren who had spent the night beginning to stir. Life continued around them, full of beauty and love, all of it rooted in a simple gesture made so many years ago. A cowboy bringing flowers to a sad young woman, wanting only to see her smile. That small kindness had grown into this, into everything, into a love story that would be told and retold for generations. Nathan and Natalie lived many more years, their love never diminishing, only deepening with time. They celebrated 50 years of marriage surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, their faces shining with happiness. When Nathan was 83, his heart finally gave out. It was quick and peaceful in his sleep on a summer night. Natalie woke to find him gone, his hand still holding hers, his face peaceful. She sat with him for a long time, saying goodbye, thanking him for every flower, every smile, every moment of their beautiful life together. The funeral was huge, the whole town turning out to honor a man who had been quiet and unassuming but deeply loved. Natalie stood by the grave, surrounded by her family, and scattered wildflowers onto the casket. Lupines and poppies, asters and yarrow, all the flowers he had brought her over the years. "Thank you," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for every morning." She lived 2 more years without him, and they were not easy years. The house felt empty without his presence. Mornings felt wrong without flowers. But she was surrounded by love, by family, by the legacy they had built together. Her children and grandchildren visited constantly, making sure she was never truly alone. She spent her final year organizing all the family papers, writing down the stories so they would not be forgotten. She wanted everyone to remember how it had started, with flowers and kindness, with a simple desire to make someone smile. That was what mattered, she wrote in her careful script. That was what lasted. Natalie passed away peacefully on a spring morning in her sleep, with a vase of wildflowers on her nightstand. Rose had brought them the day before, continuing her father's tradition. When they found her, she was smiling, one hand stretched out as if reaching for someone only she could see. They buried her next to Nathan, under the oak tree they had planted together on their 25th anniversary. The entire family gathered, 3 generations of people who existed because a lonely cowboy had brought flowers to a grieving young woman, because he had wanted to see her smile, because she had smiled back. On the shared gravestone, James carved a simple inscription, "Nathan Zimmerman and Natalie Zimmerman." He brought her flowers. She gave him a home. Together they built a life. Their love remains. And every spring, wildflowers bloom around their graves, lupines and poppies, asters and yarrow, as if the earth itself remembers the love story that began with flowers and ended only when life itself did. The family visits often, bringing their own flowers, telling the story to each new generation. Tommy's grandchildren hear about how great-grandpa Nathan rode into town before dawn every single day to leave flowers for great-grandma Natalie. Rose's great-grandchildren learn about how their great-grandmother was strong enough to run a store alone, but allowed herself to be loved by a gentle cowboy. James's descendants are told about partnership and patience, about building something lasting together. The story spreads beyond the family, becoming part of Columbia's history. The general store, still standing and still run by family, has a small display about Nathan and Natalie. There are photographs, faded but carefully preserved, showing a serious-looking man with kind eyes and a woman whose smile lights up her whole face. There is the blue ring Nathan gave Natalie, which she never took off. There are dried flowers pressed in a book, samples from various years, each one carefully dated. Young couples visit the store, wanting to hear the story, wanting to believe in that kind of love. They are told about consistency, about small gestures repeated with love, about seeing someone truly and wanting to bring them joy. They are told about resilience and partnership, about choosing each other every day. The story becomes legend, embellished in some tellings but always holding the essential truth. A cowboy gave her wildflowers every morning. She asked why. He said to see her smile. And from that simple exchange grew a love that lasted a lifetime, a family that spanned generations, a legacy of kindness and commitment. In the end, that is what matters. Not grand gestures or dramatic declarations, but the quiet, steady love that shows up every morning with flowers. The love that sees you when you are broken and wants to make you smile. The love that stays through difficulties and celebrates joys. The love that builds homes and raises children and weathers every storm. That is the love Nathan and Natalie had. That is the love they passed down. That is the love that still blooms like wildflowers in the valley, bright and beautiful and enduring, a testament to what is possible when two lonely people find each other and choose, every single day, to love. Their story reminds everyone who hears it that even in the hardest times, there is still beauty to be found, that a small kindness can change everything, that love does not have to be complicated to be profound. Sometimes it is as simple as flowers left on a doorstep. Sometimes it is as basic as wanting to see someone smile. And sometimes, if you are very lucky, that smile becomes your whole world, and you spend the rest of your life earning it, every single morning with wildflowers and love.